Hello, and welcome to the Dogfight, a podcast dedicated to the London Spitfire and Overwatch League. Fasten your seatbelts and observe the no smoking sign, because today we'll be discussing the ever-closing window of contenders and mid-season signings, the Spitfire's turbulent Week 3 performance, and how we can maybe defeat the Seoul Dynasty. I'm your host, Havokpus, and I'm joined by Wolf of Villainy as we
Hello,
discuss all these
everyone.
topics. How are you today, friend?
I'm doing fine. A little bit out of work, but generally just free, enjoying the life up. Not coaching for a little while, so yeah, just generally just relax a little bit, enjoying owl.
Well, that's good. Everyone likes a nice owl every now and then. I like the
Yes,
fluffy
yes, we
ones the
are.
best. They're the cutest.
I prefer a more fierce one, but that's just me.
Cute's the way to go. But anyway, we have a couple things to talk about. So let's get the wheels turning here, or I guess the engines spinning, the plain equivalent of wheels turning, as we talk about the midseason signing window and contenders and stuff. So Dallas Fuel announced they were signing AKM, and he'll come on whenever that mid-season signing period starts. And Philadelphia Fusion also announced the Fusion, what do they call themselves? The Fusion University for their contenders team. And this has
Yes, yeah.
some,
Both the signing is pretty huge as far as news are concerned. AKM is one of the players that have been called for being one of the best in the world, but still getting left out of the league. So having him joining back in the league in that capacity is certainly great. Even though the team might not be the team that the fans want, and also the announce of university team is also contender teams, I guess. But yeah, it's the news is also very welcome, if only because it will make other teams also announce their own contender roster. So that will also be great. I suspect we're gonna see a lot of like familiar faces from Overwatch team pre-OWL, and as well as some new faces that got discovered in between.
yeah, this has gotten me really excited because anytime news like this comes out, it's all, super, super exciting. Everyone gets to talk about stuff. I'm really curious to see how the contenders landscape turns out because there are a lot of players that could have very well been into Overwatch League but couldn't because rosters are already taken up. There's also some cases where like they're just not old enough, so maybe contenders kind of allows them to compete and give a time to just kind of practice up while they wait to get over that age limitation. But I have a question, not to dwell on this too long because everything is still up in the air. But Wolf, what players
Yeah,
would you
what's your
really like to
question?
see get signed?
No, personally, there's a lot of option at the moment. I mean, you can certainly poach like a bunch of players from the NA tier 2 scene. You can also poach players from Apex. You can certainly poach players from EU as well. Like the option is already very open, and as you can see with like the signing of Fusion University team, like they got a majority NA squad with Beast Halo, Crackalacken, Zerg, and I can't Zerg. Uh, f- all of them are not all most of them having like period tier two Overwatch experience, tier two or tier three, and then you have Alarm and Who Are You, which of who are obviously uh, very, even though they are very young, they are also very experienced since both them play in Apex before, so that's also a plus. This is going. The roster seems to be an NA and Korean mix, and with the former coach of FRG FE at helm, A lot of people got hype about who are you getting signed in NA, which is reasonable because who are you is a very skilled player as well as having one of the arguably one of the best Genji in the league. Well, not in the league, but like in the scene in general, I guess. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how it panned out. Although I found to be quite interesting that there isn't any EU players on that academy squad, even though the OWL squad is composed largely by European players.
Well, I think part of it is that, Philly is sort of an NA org, so they probably want to have as much NA as possible. I do find it interesting that they do have a mix of sort of up and coming players and seasoned players that kind of help supplement the newer players. Do you think that's something that we'll see across the board with all the teams, contenders wise, or will we have some that are more veteran mixed or more rookie based?
It's very much gonna depend on which approach any of these things gonna take. For example, I have heard about some rumors regarding London's contenders team, for example,
Give me
and
these
the
rumors.
lost.
I want to hear them.
Yeah. It's probably gonna be an EU squad. That's probably as far as I can leak, really. Not
Oh.
without getting, not without getting.
I thought we had a scoop.
Well, I mean, we can certainly have scoop, and I can certainly discuss about that when the news actually released. But for now, though, I'll probably rather keep my mouth shut. But
Damn.
like I said, London already got their academy teams in place. Philadelphia also just announced, and Boston also probably got their academy team in place too. So what I was suspecting is that a lot of teams already got their academy teams like set in stone and such. It's just a matter of time before all of them get announced.
I hate the waiting though. I do hope that players like Adam does get into can find his way into this scene, eventually get into Overwatch League, because I think he's an extremely skilled support, and I'd hate for his talent to kind of go to waste. He was so good on Cloud9, and the fact that he's not playing at the highest level feels kind of like an insult.
Yeah, a lot of it is kind of very unfortunate, but at the same time, though, you have to also consider that a lot of players, like even though Adam is obviously one of the best NA support, and he is very versatile. It's just that like for teams, they might be thinking that there's better option out there, and considering what happened in 2017, where Korean got to Apex tournament and NA only got contenders. It's there's a slight bias by favoring Korean talent over NA or Western or EU talent, which is I don't like it, but I can see the reasoning why. But even then, though, like with the way I'll have been developing whatever, I certainly think that people were just a little bit too uh, overzealous with their Korean talent is the best. If you see what I mean here.
Yeah, and that actually provides us with the perfect transition to talk about the match results that happened last week. So the London Spitfire played against the San Francisco Shock and the Boston Uprising. Going to start with the Shock match. They won the 3-1, which was pretty good, but they're still having some troubles. Spitfire is still struggling with Farah, both playing with it and against it, as well as not being able to really crack Oasis. What do you think about how he played against the Shock, Wolf?
It's kind of very interesting question, I think, because Shock obviously is one of the very loaded team in the league, arguably with all 12 players in the roster and having arguably like the best DPS lineup in the league. But obviously, like they are having trouble integrating that roster into a cohesive unit, which goes to show that just because you have a bunch of carry players and a bunch of like really mechanically gifted player doesn't mean that your team is gonna be good. Just because you throw money at something doesn't mean it will good, obviously. But I certainly think that like some of the problem that London is having can certainly be solved. It's not a hard problem, and right now we're also like very early into the season as well. So a lot of people are already getting panic or whatever, which I think is very unreasonable because it's 6 months, 40 games. Like it's gonna take a long fucking while before any sense of parity or any sense of solidarity actually happen. So right now, I'm not too terribly concerned. If I were like a GM or coach, I would really just use stage one as a stage where you try to get your stuff together, so to speak, where you just get your basic communication down, you get like synergy and everything's up, and and make your players understand that like try your best every game, but don't dwell too much on the result on it because there's still like at least 30 more games to go. You don't have to blow all your loads right now, but uh, yeah, it's just a matter of perspective. I don't think London have to panic at the moment as much as Invent would like for them to fire Bishop or maybe fire Nuts or something. But then again, it's the internet. They always overreact. So what can you do?
I do kind of agree with your perspective. The long term versus short term is something that's very difficult, I think, especially in sports, because fans want the instant gratification of winning, right? And when you
Yeah.
lose, sometimes that takes away from the big picture of, okay, we lost today, but if we try hard, we won't lose tomorrow. And it kind of balances
It's
out. So it's kind of this weird thing that a lot of people, I think, really seem to struggle with.
it's kind of a leftover from the old system, I would say. Like for example, in the old system, usually tournament only lasts like say 3 days, and usually like when a result is done, like usually those teams aren't gonna play each other again for at least like another say 3 months or 6 months or whenever the next online tournament coming up. So usually there's a certain instant gratification that is associated with it. But right now we're in a new league format where it's like 40 games, gonna be 6 months, and there's a lot of shit coming in. So it's not. So the mindset needs to be shifted from going, oh, I win you guys this match. Doesn't mean I'm better than you for the rest of the season. It just doesn't really work that way, I think. And even it's just a learning experience, I think, because this is really honestly the only league that Overwatch have ever had, and it's probably one of the longest format that we have played, if not the longest, because obviously 6 months versus say Apex only 3 months. So it's just gonna take time, really, for people to adjust whatever. But it won't stop people from making silly prediction though. Like like some people in the competitive Overwatch Discord, like at least like one or two of them at some point they were like, oh, nobody's gonna be able to beat Korean. Right on the week where London and NYXL got beat by Boston and Philly respectively, and they all just left. It's like, calm down, man. They only left one game. You know, yeah. It's
Yeah,
just gonna take time.
yeah, super true. Diving into the game a little bit, London started to hammer out their strategies a little bit more. Also, I believe it was this week they switched it up to where Numbani would be the first map, and then the escort map would be the last, I think.
Yeah, they
That
they
way,
they
that way
did
to avoid any messy tie situations at the end or something.
yeah, they did switch it up like that because they realized that with payloads map there is often time where you can have like very high octane moment where some team can like get 1 minute and then snowball a push right the way to the end, for example, and it would be really anticlimactic if a team win that way. But they already got 3-0 before, so they wouldn't like win the series. So to avoid that, they switch it up. They switch it up. So which I think is a is very good decision, because now the two now you have hybrid. You have hybrid first. You have 2 CP second. You have caught third, and you have payload last. Well, payload last, which I think it's perfectly okay.
Yeah, I completely agree. I actually like this format a lot better. I think how the matches kind of flow throughout, going from map to map. I think it flows a lot better. But back to what I was saying, Spitfire is starting to really hammer out some strategies. So when they need Pharah, they are putting it solely on Hureg, which is kind of interesting.
Again, it's very silly to blame on anyone in particularly. Like, it's unreasonable to blame on one person.
No, I mean, I'm
Up.
not blaming anyone. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that it's interesting that they're beginning to pick, a player specifically for this hero, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're having a Pharah strategy, and that Pharah strategy is, okay, we play Hureg now instead of over like Rascal or Prophet, for example.
I think it's very much a case where they are trying to integrate all the pieces they're having, because if you know, because obviously they have the OPs of GC Busan, and they have the Kondu Pantera squad, and obviously some new piece such as Fury and Nas. So I think what they're doing is they are still trying to figure out like which piece fit into which, and not necessarily just going to, oh, we're gonna use GC Busan today, or oh, we're gonna use um, KDP right away. Because if you notice, like all the roster, they have somewhat of a balance kind of composition. I would say they usually have two guys that play from KDP, and then they have two guys playing from GC, and then they have two guys that are signing leaders. So this is, I guess, is a very much a breaking down identity, so that instead of thinking, oh, they were from KDP or they were from GC Busan, now they are just London Spitfire, which is a completely reasonable approach to playing it. But some people do bring out the fact that maybe there's benefit of segregated the squad a little bit, if only to create more competition within the team. But uh, it's a reasonable approach, I guess. I guess just not quite what I think is optimal.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, we're still basically still early on in the season, so teams are still, trying to figure out things. But how do you feel like the team is kind of done with their approaches so far? Because I think with the Pharah stuff, we're doing okay, but we're not really playing Pharah, I think, maybe as optimally as we should. In some other areas, we're kind of struggling and maybe not playing as well as other teams.
Um, I think it's just repetition, really. Sometimes it's just all sometimes it's just all about like repetition and getting shit done. And with having like 12 players on the squad and limited time frame for scrim, I'm guessing there's a lot of like thought process that coming into like, who are we practicing, or what should we practicing today? So it's some obviously some of the strat could have been a little bit better, even though like London is supposedly one of the best offensive team in the league. They sometimes they it just feels like they are a little bit too dependent on their DPS to actually get shit done. Because if sometime like say Birdring gets shut out, then okay, then Profit have to carry the load. But if both of them can't do it, or if Fisher just get blow up like upon entry, like what are they going to do? So I think it's very much about trying to find team colors, a style that works with their personnel, but also at the same time provide a solid pathway to victory. That's I think it's just like again repetition, repetition, scrim, VOD review, repeat. Just gotta do that until shit get done. Really, there's really no shortcut.
Okay. Well, let's move on to probably something that everyone would much more like to have discussed, and that is the loss to Boston Uprising. This is the London Spitfire's first loss. Maybe a bit unexpected, but I think if you look at the Boston Uprising, they actually look like a really good team, right? They had a slow start, but they're starting to really pick up steam and actually starting to really look really well. And one thing that CJ and I talked about last week when discussing what London kind of need to do to make sure they win the game is to try to shut down Dream Casper. And they really didn't do a good job of that. They were letting him have so much free reign. When he was on the Pharah, he just had the skies to himself, and he was just shooting at people. When he was on like the Genji, for example, he was just diving and just killing our unprotected supports left and right. We really had trouble just stopping him from doing whatever he wanted.
I think it's also a matter of like Boston counter strat a lot of what London was doing. I think. I certainly don't think Dreams. Like I think Dream Casper was good in that series, but I think a lot of the credit also you have to give to their coordination as well as their game plan as a whole because historically speaking, like Dream Casper is not what I would call carry DPS in the same in might be in the same way as say Shadowburn or Carpe, like players that can single-handedly raise a team overall performance level just by his presence alone. So I think with the way Dreamcastle was able to play, I think it's very much a team effort in the sense that they know what London was going to do. They know what London was going to play. They know the game plan, and they just execute it perfectly. And once you execute your game plan perfectly, I mean your DPS just gonna look like a god. That's that's really what happened.
Yeah, I think
And
another
if you
thing that
and
happened.
also yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And just to throw in a comparison, like if you look at say Fusion versus NYXL, for example, there's a lot of time where Shadowburn would just bail them out by having these ridiculous like 3 or 4K Dragon Blade, you know. But if you look at say the games between London and Boston, like you don't see Striker or Dreamcast do that. It's you don't see them clutch as much as say, Shadowburn. Um, but what they did do well is just that they were playing very consistently. They didn't make many mistakes, and they have solid shot calling and solid direction in terms of what they want to do versus London. And I think that's really the key to victory for them in that match, at least.
Yeah, I agree. I think Boston looked very well coordinated. Everyone was on the same page. I think also what was interesting was Boston was doing like a really aggressive diving strategy, and I think it really took London off guard a bit because Boston was just going in hard, and London was just having to deal with it. A lot of the times, because of that, Nuss and Bedosin would get caught out. They would die, and it just made
Yeah.
things like a lot more difficult for London because your healing is cut in half to gone a lot more than it
In
has been.
Yeah. In terms of stylistic matchup, I don't think I don't think London have ever fight against a team that actually took the initiative and take the fight to them, and Boston took the initiative first, which I think is certainly a solid game plan as far as as far as the game plan goes, because sometimes like with an aggressive thing, you can either play defensively, and then try to catch them out, or you can just try to out aggress the other team, because you might think that it will also catch them off guard. And obviously from that match, Boston feels like the later approach was appropriate, so they just decided, you know what, fuck it, just roll with it, and it paved the way for them to victory. So yeah, I think it's also there's a certain degree of disrespect with Boston when they go up against London as well, because I don't see Boston playing scared versus London at all. Like they wasn't like skittish, or they wasn't like confusing. They have a game plan. And whenever there's a team fight, they come in and decisively, and they just adhere to the game plan as much as possible. Which I think is also a very underrated aspect of that match, because if you are if you like haven't played versus like world class players before, sometimes it can be intimidating to go up against them, and it might affect your performance level. So sometimes, like, even though you know they're good, you just kind of have to cast your doubt away, and then just figure, okay, they are nothing. We're just gonna shit on them. And I think that's also partly why like Boston was able to eke out the win, even though people thought that they were gonna get 4-0.
Yeah. Yeah, I think also conversely, perhaps London maybe slept on Boston a little bit. They looked, some people said they looked kind of tired, and maybe that's because they had to play back-to-back games on top of scrimming and practice and all the other stuff they probably have to deal with as being like an Overwatch League player. So, London wasn't on their best game that day, and Boston was maybe over-exceeding expectations, and maybe they just, hulked up and finally put themselves on a new level. Maybe.
Certainly. I don't think it's that way necessarily. If only because NYXL also have to play their game back to back this week, and their second game looked better than their last game, even though like realistically like they should beat in Fusion, but then next day they beat Seoul, so it's it's kind of like maybe not.
Hmm. Well, do you have any final thoughts on the Boston Uprising game? It was not the best match, but I think it shows again some weaknesses that we can work on, as well as perhaps maybe a lesson in preparedness, and to make sure not to underestimate your opponent no matter what their current standings are.
I think London just need to pull themselves up by the bootstrap and just try to play the game, really. Just try to play the game, execute the game plan, and just focus on that. I think that alone would help them quite a bit, and also maybe like establishing like a solid rotation as a base for it would also helps, I think. But that's again very much up to the discretion of their coach.
Hmm. I agree. Well, thank you for your points on evaluating the matches. If anyone has any sort of opinions on how the matches went and you want to talk to us, hit us up on Twitter. I believe we are at the Dogfight. As you can see, how silly I am. But yeah, hit us up on Twitter or on YouTube in the comments or on Reddit, and give us your own opinions. But moving on to some match previews, and this week should be fairly exciting. So on Thursday, we have Seoul Dynasty, which is February 1st at 9 p.m. Eastern. And on Saturday, we have the Shanghai Dragons on Saturday, February 3rd at 2 p.m. Eastern. So, kind of a fighting the best versus kind of the worst this week. What are your initial impressions?
Despite what despite what the standing would imply to you, I think both match are very much winnable for London. If like for example, like the London, like for example the Shanghai match. Okay, one of London being like on top of the league, and then and then Shanghai being kind of well bottom of the league, bottom of the league. So I mean, like unless like Shanghai just immediately got like 400 milligrams of Adderall or something, I certainly don't see why London can't just 4-0 them. But if there was going to be like say a map on Oasis, then that would be a bit interesting because if London lost the map in Oasis versus Shanghai, that would I would probably ring the alarm by then because like honestly like if you can't even win King of the Hill versus about literally the bottom of the league, like there's some serious soul searching that you need to take. So that's what
Yes,
I think.
please practice Oasis. Please improve it. You
Yeah,
you just look really silly in that you can't win this map. But
yeah. As far as the second maps go, I think it's also very much winnable for Seoul. Even though like Seoul have been winning until their match with NYXL. There's some one other thing people kind of overlook is that like Seoul also have one of the easiest schedule um, in the in the league at the moment as well. Like they beat Florida, they beat Shanghai, and they beat Dallas, and I mean all of them are kind of like bottom level, bottom or at least like the lower half of the ranking. Uh, so um and obviously the Souls loss to NYSL also certainly exposed them a little bit because now teams are gonna like really pay attention to that particular match to look at to see how they can beat. So it's very much gonna be and also for the fact that like personally I think like in terms of if you think like like row by row pound by pound, I don't think London is anyway like inferior to Seoul at all. Like London have the best DPS in the league, arguably the best DPS pair in the league, and even though like Seoul have Fleta, Munchkin and Bunny have been kind of lackluster, to be completely honest. And also the tank line, you could argue that you could argue that Seoul have does not have as good as a tank line as London. And lastly, the support. Obviously, Ryujin Hang on Toby is still gonna be the undisputed support, but Nuss and Bidosen is I think it's very much a case up 10 and 9, which is not very far of a comparison at all. So I think this is a totally winnable game for London. And if London, like even if London can took it to like a 2-3, I think that's already a very good result because at least that showed that a London can be competitive within the top tier of their ranking, and B so can lead, which is which is another thing that other team will also pay very heavy attention to.
yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a super tough match. I think for London, it's definitely going to come down to team coordination. If the tanks aren't coordinating with the DPS and the supports, then we'll kind of have what happened with Boston. They'll go too far forward and they'll just kind of jump in. The supports are out of position. Supports die, DPS die, tanks die, and everyone's just kind of falling all over the place. But if they come together, they can really do something, because when you see them super coordinated and in sync and firing at all cylinders, they're just crushing everybody. I mean, they have some of the best players in the league. I think it's just a matter of making sure everyone is on the same wavelength and everyone is playing towards the same game plan and the same goal in mind. Whether that be shut down Fleta so he can't snipe people, or shut down Rujahong so he can't keep everyone alive for a lot longer than they really should be. As long as they're playing towards one, goal, and they're all on the same page, I think they have a good shot at winning it, but it'll be close.
Yeah, I think it's certainly gonna be close, and if I were a betting man, I'll just pay attention to what Invent gonna say, because at the end of the day, Invent's gonna be on fire regardless. Like because from what I heard, like they like when London lost, they demand they demand Bishop and Nuts to be fired. But if like say and when Seoul lost, they demand Cookie and Miro to be fired.
After one loss?
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
I mean, as Invent, just it's basically Korean Reddit, and have about as much brain as Reddit basically. So both reactions just gonna bring out the troll in me. So I'm like, and I'm just gonna be looking forward to see how it goes. Like whoever lose, I win basically.
It's like Alien versus Predator.
Yep.
But hopefully it will at least be an entertaining match. If it goes to 5 games, I'll be happy regardless of what happens.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance this goes to 5 games. It will be interesting to see if the KDP core of London is going to be able to take revenge upon the Apex match, where they lost in a very close margin to Lunatic High. So that will also be an interesting storyline coming in.
Yeah, I think Fisher would probably be really good for this match. I think that his play is a lot more aggressive, but I think he's also much better at shot calling, and I think that he can lead the team better than perhaps Jester. Jester seems more defensive in his play rather than Fisher, who is more aggressive and offensive. And I think that against Seoul, I think you need to take the fight to them, and I think Fisher would probably be a lot better for that.
Well, if anything, I would just pay really close attention to the NYXL versus Seoul match, because it clearly showed that there are weaknesses, and from the way I see it, I don't think those are kind of like the weaknesses where you can like solve immediately. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see which kind of approach that London's going to do in order to beat Seoul, and at the same time, what kind of approach Seoul's gonna do to show up the mistake. So, yeah.
Yeah, it should be a good game. I guess my final thoughts on Shanghai. Again, it should be an easy 4-0. If you let them take a map off you, that's not the best look. As well as, just don't underestimate them. Treat them as if they were any other really good team, and come in prepared and come in smart. Don't do like you did last week with Boston Uprising and underestimate them and just assume that you'll win off of pure mechanics.
Well, to be fair, I don't think London underestimated Boston at all. It's just a matter of, like, in that particular time, Boston just frankly play better.
Well, regardless, they shouldn't underestimate them.
Yeah.
even if
Ideally,
even
you
even
shouldn't
if they haven't won a
underestimate
single
anyone
match.
at all. But yeah.
But yeah. Well, do you have any thoughts? Do you want to give like a prediction for the matches and what like the map score will be for each?
Um, I think it's going to be a 3-2 for London, or even a 3-1 if London play their cards right. But I'm not gonna be surprised if it goes to Solway, and I saw Shanghai go, probably a 4-0 in favor of London. So
You you almost gave the forward to Shanghai.
yeah, just have to catch myself there for a
Nah,
second.
yeah, you recognize you're about to make a mistake. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think for Seoul, I think it's gonna be 3-2. It'll be close. Someone will win, but I think London, like I said, can do it. It'll go 3-2. Shanghai, I think it'll go 3-1. I think London still has not improved on their Oasis play enough. I think they're going to drop another Oasis map, and it'll be to Shanghai, but they'll win 3-1.
I mean, if they put mirrors, and I'm just gonna be like, "Yep, so is throwing." And if they, which is very rude for for somebody who won 2 Apex in a row. But um, mirror honestly at this point is not the option that Soul should take, even if Cookie seemingly feed last match, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think that'll do it for us today. So please put your tray tables up and return your seats to their full upright position because we are coming in for a landing. So thank you for listening to our podcast, and we hope to see you in the skies real soon. Goodbye, everyone.
Yep. See ya.
Yeah.
Yep. See ya, everyone.
Yep.
Oh,
Bye.
and one last thing. If everyone have any time and have any interest in like in-depth breakdown of Overwatch League matches, I have a series of analysis breakdown at twitch.tv/Wolf of Villainy. As a part of my ongoing series, and I did broke down some of the earlier matches. In AL, for example, the Philadelphia versus NYXL match. So if you have the time, feel free to hop by, watch, and maybe give me a comment or feedback. That we really appreciate it. Shameless plug. Call.
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, please check that out. He would really appreciate. We would really appreciate it. Also, a shameless plug. If you are a Cloud9 fan and want to hear some other Cloud9 fans gush about the amazing Boston Major win that Cloud9 CS:GO happened to get over the weekend, be sure to tune into Bodied this Wednesday at 10 p.m. Central, not Central, Eastern, 10 p.m. Eastern, and enjoy some really cool talk about that moment in the match and how it happened. So thank you for listening, everyone, and see you later.
Bye bye.
Bye. All right, are we gonna do
Okay,
the sync thing or?
yeah, we can do the same thing.
Okay.
1, 2,
Two,
3.
three,
Sick.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I missed the initial sync.